Welcome back. I'm Rob Revelius from Property Wealth System. What I want to talk to you about is asbestos, why you need to know about it as an investor developer, and what you can do about it. So let's go into it.
Eventually it dried out, leaving cracks and crevices which made a sort of rock matrix or mold. The silk-like fibers that grew in the cracks were the material from which asbestos was made. So you see, the remarkable fire-resisting, sound-insulating product known as asbestos is not a vegetable fiber, but a mineral, a piece of rock.
Welcome to this new project of ours, 8,500 square feet. It's three old Victorian properties. It was a running care home. We knew that it didn't really have asbestos, but we need to do the checks as well. As we're forming the plan, the structural engineers need to come in here and do some destructive tests. So before that happens, we need to ensure that it's safe. And that's why we get a survey done. We are obviously investors and developers. We don't need to know all about the asbestos necessarily, but we need to be aware of it. You identify what survey you need and the right professionals to recruit in that position. There's different categories of asbestos to do with different intensities and different fibres that they use. We've got to make sure that we've got the right procedures in place to get that removed. Asbestos comes in numerous different forms. It was used throughout building and construction back in the day. What you may find is obviously everyone's pretty much aware of the Artex ceiling. That's typically a low grade asbestos, but you still need to get it checked and removed. You might see it on the bitumen to stick down floor coverings, which is a real pig to remove because obviously it's a real adhesive. You might see it on the backboards on boilers or electrical plates or above steels. That's typically quite a high grade of asbestos. You might get it on cladding, as far as heat cladding on pipes or water cylinders. That's certainly where we found it to our detriment. On one of our projects, it cost us around £15,000 to remove a metre cubed box because it had deteriorated, and as it had deteriorated, the fibres could have spread. So there's different mitigations of how they can remove it, but each surveyor will assess those likelihood and the best way to do it because they have to follow the procedures. So the removal of asbestos is, have you seen the scene from E.T. where they've the bikes just when they're taking E.T. away before they go airborne? It's exactly like that. You've got all these tunnels and kind of sheeting around. That's all to create a negative pressure so they don't, the fibres can't escape to the outside world and it gets vacuumed into bags. And all that is where the cost is at for double bagging and making sure it goes into the correct skip. Really impressive, really expensive. So obviously we want to avoid that, or at least factor that into our costs and our negotiations as early as possible. We'll have a very quick whiz around of where the asbestos surveyors have come in and done the destructive testing, just to double check what's behind there. So, if you follow me. So they take boards off the walls to check what's behind there and what's the adhesive. So they've taken up carpets to check what's sticking the carpet down and whether that contains asbestos. And each one of these cases they do a scrape sample and that will be sent off to a lab and they're a test of what the makeup of that asbestos and how high grade it is, as in how much asbestos is in there. Because sometimes it's small particulates. They take the boards off here, this is fairly typical, and also up here you can see that they've chipped away at that board. Because that would be a steel, steels need to be fireproofed and asbestos was typically used in that case. If we go through here, through the rabbit run, you see they've also been in here and taken off the fireplace to check what the backboards are here. And then also looking up here, taking wallpaper down to see what's stuck in there. This is obviously something you can't do during your viewing if you've pre-purchased, because the vendor's typically quite upset if you start destroying their building. But this is something you would do subject to surveys, or even just get a general overview by a surveyor, just to say, well, it's highly likely you're going to have asbestos there, so they can make that initial judgment before going off and doing the destructive testing. But they'll go through the whole building, poking holes, testing things, just to make sure you're covered and you've identified the right issues. That's a short video on asbestos and why it's so important. If you're after more information about investment and development, click here or here, and you'll get loads more information on that channel. Click like, subscribe and notification button.
The complete firefighter in the sort of all asbestos suit that can be found at any RAF station. Against an incendiary bomb, the asbestos snuffer is very effective. Asbestos comes into the home in the shape of fireproof curtains and covers, and in a variety of patterns.